the term insurrection jumps out. And the questions are, what does that mean? How do you define it? Who decides? Who decides whether someone engaged in it?
The question that you have to confront is why a single state should decide who gets to be president of the United States. It sounds awfully national to me. You know, if you weren't from Colorado and you were from Wisconsin or you were from Michigan, and it really, you know, what the Michigan Secretary of State did is going to make the difference between, you know, whether candidate A is elected or candidate B is elected. I mean, that seems quite extraordinary.
It's going to have, as Justice Kagan said, the effect of Colorado deciding.
Former law clerk in the United States Supreme Court, Steven Bradbury, joins me. Nice to see you.
Great, Greta. It's a privilege to be here. Thank you.
We don't know what's going on behind closed doors, but no one knows sort of the inside mechanics than someone who's clerked in the Supreme Court. This was argued February 8th. And you listen to those arguments, and we all try to read the tea leaves. What's taking them so long, do you think? And I know it's just a guess, but what do you think?
Well, my guess would be that the Chief Justice would like to get as close to unanimous opinion as he can. And, you know, the court could decide this on very narrow grounds, that the president is not an officer of the United States. That was the #1 argument that Trump's lawyers made in the court. Or the definition of insurrection. We heard Justice Kavanaugh talk about that. That would be a more complicated question. If they went more narrow, they could decide it quickly and get perhaps a unanimous court.
And you know, I'm a little bit hung up on the insurrection thing because so many people talk about insurrection, and I guess that I look globally at these cases, and Special Counsel Jack Smith could have indicted Trump for insurrection had he believed the evidence was there for the grand jury, but he never did. So there's never insurrection. So I don't understand how he could sort of get thrown off a ballot for insurrection when you don't have a trial on it, and certainly not beyond a reasonable doubt.
It's a very good question. You know, the insurrection, the federal crime of insurrection is really implementing, in part, this Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. Congress has implemented it by enacting a federal crime for rebellion or insurrection against the United States. And as you say, President Trump was never charged with that. He hasn't been found guilty of that.
You know, see, this one seems like an easy one to me. Of course, I'm not on the Supreme Court. No one's ever suggested I should be on. But is that one of the justices, I think it was Justice Kagan, said, are we going to let 3 states determine the outcome of the election? And not even just 3 states. It might be a Secretary of State or 4 judges in Colorado determine the whole election for the rest of the country. So bringing back to that, I go back to, like, what is taking this court so long to decide? Because this one seems easy to me.
Well, I think it could be that 1 or 2 justices would like to write separately on one of these issues. There are a number of issues in the case. Let's say the majority of the court decides on a very narrow issue, like officer of the United States. But one of the other justices wants to write and explain why President Trump could not be found guilty or has not committed an insurrection, or a state could not disqualify him on that ground. And so the majority might not reach that issue, but one or more of the justices might want to write on it, and they need to have time to write their opinion.
But, well, they got a bunch of law clerks. They've had a month. You know, they got lifetime appointments too. But do you think they're cognizant or paying any attention? I know they're supposed to be immune of all politics, but are they paying attention to the timeline?
Oh, absolutely.
Because Tuesday is a primary day.
Absolutely, and certainly if there were a question of keeping the president off the ballot before Tuesday, I think there's no doubt the court would have gotten its business done and the opinion out. But as you know, the Supreme Court in Colorado stayed its own decision and kept President Trump on the ballot. Same thing has happened in Maine and in Illinois. So in both of those states, he's also remaining on the ballot pending the outcome of the Supreme Court's decision.
It's a little bit like a pocket veto, though. They can just sit on it until June.
Well, that's true,
but it has no real impact because of all the stays.
Well, but I'm confident they're not going to do that. If there's any way the Chief Justice can organize the court and get an opinion out, I believe he really is trying to do that quickly, because the country needs to know this issue needs to be resolved well before the rest of the states in sequence hold their primary.
Okay, for those of us who